Hey, hi, hello. You're listening to Chicken Chronicles, the podcast where storytelling gets brutally honest, creativity gets a little chaotic, and writing a novel is equal parts magic and mild panic. I'm your host, Courtney, paranormal mystery author and proud survivor of multiple plot spirals. If you know, you know. And today, we're diving into something juicy, something that might just save your creative sanity. It's all about what no one tells you about writing a novel. Sure, you've heard the Pinterest quotes and motivational hype, but what about the weird in between? The I just wrote 10,000 words and I hate them all stage. The should this character even exist meltdown? That's what we're cracking open today. But before we tear into that metaphorical Google Doc, do me a solid, hit the follow, subscribe, or leave a review. It helps tell that mysterious podcast algorithm god that, hey, this chaotic writer might be worth listening to. All right, ready to see what writing a novel actually looks like and how to survive it? Let's go. So here's how I thought writing my first novel would be: a shiny outline, a clever protagonist dropping mic-worthy one-liners, a story arc so flawless it practically strutted off of the page. Reality check. It was me, hunched over my laptop in an oversized hoodie, nursing the same cup of coffee for the third time because I kept reheating it and then forgetting it, muttering, who even let me try to write a book? Because the plot spiral, it was painfully real. You might start off with bulletproof chapter beats, color coded index cards, a Pinterest board loaded with moody forests and dagger quotes. Then, somewhere around chapter 6, a side character drops a single devastating line, and suddenly they're hijacking your whole story like, surprise, it's all about me now. Or your main character's emotional logic pulls them somewhere your outline did not expect. Now your GPS is just screeching, recalculating, recalculating. But here's the gold nugget no one really stresses enough. That is not failure. That is story. When you let your character's inner truth lead the plot, when their wounds, hopes, and impossible choices steer that ship, that's when your story stops being a blueprint and really starts to breathe. You need to decide early if you want your story to be character driven or plot driven, because this will help you decide if you need to pump those brakes and go back to that big venture battle that you had planned, or if you really need to think about how realistic your characters are and how their growth is actually pushing the story forward. Because, sure, plot twists and big battles, they hook readers. But what keeps them flipping pages at 3 a.m.? It's seeing someone that they care about stand in front of a locked door, their heart racing, and trying to decide if they'll turn that key. When you create characters who feel as real and as complicated as your sister, your daughter, or your best friend, someone who might infuriate you, who's going to keep secrets, and who will do the wrong thing for all the right reasons, that's where that connection begins. So, yeah, let your character surprise you. Follow their emotional arcs. And remember, you can fix that structure later. You can trim scenes, add foreshadowing, tighten subplots. But if you've got honest, gut punching characters, you'll always find your way back. All right. So we've got living, breathing characters. But even the most deliciously messy human or monster needs a world to collide with. Because your protagonist's hopes, fears, and awkward coping mechanisms, they don't float around in a void. They bump against the world around them. The creaky old house that never seems warm enough. The bustling city streets that smells like hot pretzels and missed chances. The shadowy forest with secrets that probably want to eat them. That is where we get into something writers either completely overlook or get wildly carried away with. Trust me, I've done both, often in the same manuscript. But what we have here is world building. So, what is world building exactly? World building is the art of creating that reality your story lives in. the physical space, social rules, cultures, histories, even the mood of the place. It what makes your story feel like it's happening somewhere real, whether it's a haunted southern town, a Brooklyn coffee shop with suspiciously perfect lighting, or a cramped apartment where every creaky floorboard seems to have an opinion. And why is this important? Because the world shapes your characters just as much as their backstories do. It's the friction or comfort of the world around them that reveals who they are. Their choices aren't made in a vacuum. They're forged by the expectations, obstacles, and odd little details of the place that they call home. So here's the common trap. Sometimes you can get so deep in the weeds, obsessing over street names, fictional election cycles, or the exact color of a local school mascot that you accidentally start writing a town census instead of a novel. Here's my tip. You have two basic paths. There's option one. Go ahead and build a damn map. Draw it, label it, color code it, if that's what helps to keep your brain straight. Then tuck it away and get back to writing. Set a strict timeline for when you're going to write your map and then move on to the next piece. Don't get lost in option one. Option two, build just enough to make the world feel lived in. Then move on. You don't need to know the tax policy of your haunted small town unless your character is literally the mayor. Ask yourself, what do you, the writer, actually need to know to understand the character's journey? Then ask, what does the reader need to know to understand this character's journey? Everything else, honestly, save it for your website or your social media bonus content or that inevitable deep dive you do on TikTok when someone asks you for your obscure lore. Your story doesn't need to be a brochure for a fake tourist board. It's a human or occasionally monstrous experience set against a backdrop that should feel just solid enough to lean on. And speaking of world that feels real, let's talk about that sneaky little gremlins who live in them. Because sometimes you're so focused on your main character's epic meltdown or crafting a world that could rival big name authors who have deals with theme parks that you glance sideways and realize, wait a second, why is this random side character suddenly stealing every scene? Which brings us to an important and slightly dangerous question. Does the side character deserve a spinoff? I'm only half joking when I say these side characters will rise up and demand attention. They'll monologue, they'll deliver devastating one liners, they'll flirt with everyone in sight, or be suspiciously competent just when your poor main character is having a meltdown. Suddenly, they're dancing around like, look at me, I have a tragic backstory energy, and I'm amazing at making cocktails. Write my book. And hey, sometimes that's actually wonderful. A well placed, vivid side character can elevate your whole story, showing sides of your protagonist you wouldn't get otherwise. They can add humor, tension, or thematic echoes that make your novel richer. But here's the tricky part sometimes they're just distracting. They're not advancing your protagonist's journey, they're just pulling focus. And it becomes like inviting someone to your birthday party who then decides it's actually their karaoke night. Do you need this? So, how do you know the difference? Ask yourself, is this character pushing my main character's emotional arc or narrative? Ask yourself, is this character pushing my main character's emotional or narrative arc forward? Or are they just kind of around to have fun? Are they revealing something essential, challenging your protagonist, complicating their choices, raising the stakes? Or are they just there because you personally want to hang out with them a little bit more than your main character? And that's where the dreaded kill your darlings come in. It doesn't always mean literal death unless you're writing murder mysteries, then in which case carry on. But it can mean being willing to quietly fade out or trim down a character who isn't truly serving the story, even if you adore them, even if they have the best lines. Because at the end of the day, your novel isn't about giving every interesting personality a stage. It's about delivering a satisfying, emotional, honest journey for your main character and the reader. So, by all means, keep a side file or a secret Pinterest board on your scene stillers. Maybe they'll get that spinoff someday. But If they're not deepening or driving the story you're telling right now, let them bow out gracefully. Your future readers, your future self during draft revision 7, and your editor will thank you. And speaking of future you, let's talk about something that might save your sanity just as much as trimming those side characters. That's accepting that how you write is every bit as personal and occasionally messy as what you write. Because there is no perfect way to write a novel. There's no sacred ritual. There's no universal beat sheet that guarantees brilliance. Some of us plot out every single scene on a whiteboard that looks like a conspiracy theorist's dream. Some of us chase vibes like fireflies, following a spark of dialogue or an image until we see where it lands. Some writers write out of order, the ending first, then the middle, then a scene where that might be a chapter or two, and then another chapter here. Who even knows? And guess what? All of that is valid. Personally, I'm a hybrid. I start with a chaotic brain dump. Just every thought, snippet of dialogue, half-baked plot twist, or random nightmare I had at 2 a.m. spilled out on a Google Doc. From there, I try to wrangle into my from there, I try to wrangle my ideas into a story beat, like lining up feral ducks. Then I build my outline because I have to sleep at night and I know I'll forget everything if I don't write it in a linear fashion. But I also intentionally leave blank spots, room for chaos to come knocking, because honestly, some of my absolute best plot twists, the ones where my beta readers messaged me about in all caps saying, "Excuse me, how dare you?" were total excellence. They're glorious, gut trusting, well, that escalated quickly accidents that I got inspired during my walk. So, here is your official permission to do what works for you. Even if it's weird, even if it looks nothing like what the best-selling authors swear by on YouTube, even if it's different from the process you thought you'd have. Because the goal isn't being the most organized or to match some mythical real author checklist. The goal is to get the story out of your head and onto the page in whatever beautifully messy way that happens. So, let me round out today's episode with a few rapid-fire tips from the drafting trenches. These helped me personally through the process, and maybe they can help you. Tip 1. Finish the first draft. It can be ugly. Just finish it. It can be chaotic. Just finish it. Remember, you cannot revise or edit a blank page, so finish the first draft. Tip 2. Think in scenes and not chapters. Scenes are more emotional beats, while chapters are the containers that hold that emotional beat. Don't focus on the container. Focus on the emotion. Tip 3. Create a story calendar. Time jumps, birthdays, flashback, any important date you need to track because you will lose it. Make yourself a timeline as early in your writing process as possible. Tip 4. Reread out loud. Then have someone else read it to you. Your brain will lie to you. Your ears won't. You hold the potential to catch new mistakes anytime you read it out loud. Tip 5. Remember, momentum matters more than perfection. Keep going. Even slow writing is still forward motion until you finish that first draft. And honestly, if you take nothing else from today, let it be, and honestly, if you take nothing else from today, let it be this. Writing a book is messy for everyone. Those little survival tips, they're just there to keep you moving when your brain tries to convince you to quit. Because at the end of the day, it's not about having the cleanest draft or the most color-coded calendar. It's about showing up for your story imperfectly, consistently, until it exists. Writing a novel isn't just a creative challenge, it's a personal one. It asks you to show up again and again, even when the inspiration's dried up and the plot doesn't make sense anymore. But you're doing the thing. You're making your dreams come true. You're making something from nothing. And no matter where you are in the process, beginning, middle, or burn it down and start over, I promise you're not alone. If this episode resonated with you, share it with your fellow writers or leave me a review so I know you're part of the author club. If you follow me on Spotify, throw a tornado in the comments so I know you made it to the end and are ready to join the chaos of author life. If you're curious about my own novel in the making, The Missing Reflection hits shelves, or has hit shelf depending on when you found me, on September 2nd. It's got mystery mirror realms and maybe a blood ritual or two. Check my link tree in the episode description on how you can claim your own copy. Until next time, keep going. Trust the weirdness, and remember, chaos can be edited later. See you in the next chapter. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Chicklin Chronicles. Make sure you like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss a story or a conversation. See you next time.